Hello, and welcome to the Path of Most Persistence. This is a place where we hear and share tenacious stories of overcoming obstacles with our partners who dare to share a bit of their own personal paths. Dr. Oscar Acuna has over 35 years of combined experience in international diplomacy, technical cooperation programs, project management, and international development in both private and public sectors. He joined Texas A&M in January of 2019 and has served in various positions supporting international programs, including with us, the Nuclear Power Institute, Nuclear Security Sciences and Policy Institute, the Program for International Nuclear Energy, and most recently as the lead for outreach and international programs with the National Center for Electron Beam Research at AgriLife Research. Before joining Texas A&M University, Dr. Acuna served as section head of the Technical Cooperation Development of the International Atomic Energy Agency, where he was responsible for the overall management of the Technical Cooperation Program for several member states. He spent close to 20 years at the IAEA promoting cooperation and transferring nuclear technologies to countries of various regions for peaceful uses of nuclear techniques in the food and agriculture, environment, health, energy, and industrial sectors to support their national development programs. Dr. Acuna.
Thank you.
I am so happy you're here. Now, I have to say that your introduction, albeit brief, you have so much, so many accomplishments, so many awards, so many acknowledgments. So hopefully we'll be able to cover that. But I just want to acknowledge to you and, of course, our audience that not only are you an outstanding professional with a tremendous history, a very well-respected history, I consider you my friend. We met several years ago, and hopefully we'll touch on some of that. I want to first start off with is a new accomplishment you just earned recently. Can we start with that, and then we can talk about all the other things?
Sure. Thank you. First of all, thank you, Valerie, for allowing me this opportunity to be in your podcast. It's really a pleasure and honor for me. And as you said, you are my dear friend, as not only colleague for many years, so I really feel very good to be here. Yes, I'm very happy to share with you and the colleagues that finally I reached my goal of becoming a doctor. I completed my thesis for the PhD in the area where I've been working for many, many years, the nuclear sector. So it is basically on international nuclear policies. And I feel very happy because, as I said, for many years, since I've been very busy with many, activities, not only at the IAEA, but also here at Texas A&M, it was a bit of a challenge.
Yes.
To complete this goal, but I finally did it. So I'm very happy to share that with you.
Thank you so much. And I knew you had been working toward it, but realizing that this was just recently finished, completed, I just want to congratulate you and commend you for that determination, that tenacity to get it done, because it's not easy. It's not easy for just the program itself because it's always very rigorous, obviously. But again, with all your other commitments, professionally, personally, all the things. So thank you so much for sharing that. And again, heartfelt congratulations. And I'm going to force myself every time I see you, rather than calling you Oscar, I'm going to call you Dr. Acuna, because I must do it because I know. Just briefly for me, after earning something like that, I realized how important, of course, it was for me, because that was an accomplishment that I had hoped. First of all, I never thought that I would be able to attain. But more importantly than for me, Oscar, it was important for me as a mother, a wife, and even as a child to my parents. It made me proud to be able to do something like that, that because of my own parents' circumstances, they were never allowed or able to really have much education, formal education, albeit they're amazingly brilliant. But it was good. I was hoping that they would see that accomplishment for me as one for themselves, but also for representation. Especially, of course, globally, but since we're sitting here in Texas, I think it's very important that we, especially with our last names, it's really important that we acknowledge that accomplishment for ourselves and each other. So again, congratulations.
Thank you, Valerie, really.
So just a little bit more with this. What does it mean to you personally, and maybe even to your family? Has anyone expressed to you what it means to them? But most definitely, what does it mean to you to have earned this accomplishment, Oscar?
Oh, it's wonderful. As I mentioned, it's a wonderful feeling of fulfillment, of really being able to complete finally a goal that I set for myself many years ago, because of all the activities, you are involved, as you mentioned, is very difficult, really, sometimes to, have the time and the energy to really do this. But my family has been very supportive, I have to say, particularly my wife. She's also a very busy lady. She has been a diplomat for Costa Rica for many years. She served as an ambassador of Costa Rica in Austria for several years, and not only Austria, but also representing the neighboring countries in Austria, and also to the international UN organizations based in Vienna. Mm-hmm. So of course, she has a brilliant career, a professional career, and she has been a tremendous support for me, and as a person I need to really thank dearly, because that was in many occasions the driving force for me, to continue. Sometimes, you feel like it's not possible, but if you have a person behind you who love you and really support you, that makes things totally different. And that was the case in my case for my wife. And also my children, as you know, also I have 3 girls. Yes. All of them are grown-ups, and they are very successful also in their own careers. And they were very happy. And as soon as they realized about this achievement, they called me and said, "Oh, Daddy, we're very proud of you, and we were expecting this for many, many years, and now it's done. So you have to feel proud of yourself." So that's the best I would say reward you can have.
Yes, well, thank you for sharing that with us. And I've had the good fortune of meeting one daughter, but most definitely your lovely, accomplished wife. And no doubt they were all very supportive. So thank you for taking the time. I always like to be able to give our guests an opportunity to thank individuals publicly. So I'm glad you were able to do that.
Thank you.
So we're going to pivot just a bit. So again, your background is impressive and extensive, but let's start with what you're currently doing. Can you tell me about your current position and for whom you work? If we can you talk about the research that is happening there and what you do? Sure.
Yes. Thank you. Well, as you mentioned, I joined Texas A&M in 2019. And at that time, I had the privilege to work with you in the Nuclear Power Institute, which I was very happy that. Actually, when I was in Vienna, I met Dr. Lee Petticourt, and he is the person who made it possible for me to come here. Yes. He invited me. When he realized I was retiring from the IAEA, he told me, "Oscar, we need you in Texas A&M, and please come." So I'm very thankful to Dr. Petticourt for that invitation. And for me, I have to say, it was a totally, I would say, change of my, I would not say change of my career, because I continue working in the same field, but, it's differently when you were working for an international organization like the IAEA, and then working for Texas A&M, which is a very prestigious university and, well known around the world. So Recently, I would say, well, maybe a year ago, not so recent now, Dr. Suresh Pillai, who is the director of the National Center for Electron Beam Research at Department of Agriculture, AgriLife, as it is known, invited me to join his team because he had a contract with the Department of Energy, the U.S. Department of Energy, who is promoting the use of alternative technologies like electron beam and X-rays over radioactive sources, high activity sources like cobalt-60 and cesium-137. So he knew about my experience at the IAEA in dealing with this type of programs of cooperation with many member states, and he thought that it could be a contribution to this program in the E-beam Center. So I joined the center, as I said, about a year ago, and I started immediately working with Dr. Pillai in conducting some feasibility studies in countries who are interested in adopting alternative technologies, as I mentioned, the electron beam and X-ray. So at the moment we have about 6 countries in Latin America and 2 countries in Asia and the Pacific who are receiving our cooperation and working with us in completing those feasibility studies with the purpose of building an electron beam facility for industrial applications, mainly, for food irradiation, sterilization of medical devices, working with plastic upcycling plastics and recycling plastics, which is a very, I think, important topic at the moment in the world because of the environmental problems they represent. So I'm dealing basically with these projects at the E-beam Center, basically doing 2 things. One is promoting education and I would say outreach to those countries and stakeholders who are interested in these technologies, explaining how they work and how they can benefit their activities. And on the other hand, facilitating the process of adoption of the technologies. As you know, it takes a bit of time for them to really build the infrastructure to be able to operate an electron beam facility. And this is what we're doing in cooperation with as I said, with the Department of Energy, and particularly the program of National Nuclear Security Administration and the Office of Radiological Security, because they have the mission to reduce the risk around the world of not only radiological safety risk, but also the physical security risk. As you know, there are a lot of issues associated with radioactive sources. If they are ended up in the wrong hands, it might be a catastrophic situation because they can build the so-called dirty bombs.
Yes.
And so by reducing those equipments, those radioactive sources around the world, we're contributing to reduce the risk of those nuclear security issues, and at the same time providing them the possibility to adopt, I would say, a much, effective technology, which is the electron beam, because it has more capacity. It works on electricity, not on radioactivity, which is good. So you just plug it in and plug it off when you don't need it to use it. So radioactivity stops as soon as you switch it off from the power. So, which is not the case of radioactive sources, because they are working 24/7. Radioactivity is always there, and that's the problem. So this is what we're doing in the Electron Beam Center.
Very good. You mentioned so many items that I want to pull apart because they're also very important. But I also, for the sake of our audience, we have a very diverse audience. We have the good fortune of having listeners from different countries globally. That's wonderful and humbling to know. But we also have young students and educators that are listening. So some of my questions are going to be for both audiences, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So you mentioned E-beam. E-beam is the shorthand for?
Electron beam.
Very good. And that is your research center. So when we refer in this conversation to E-beam, we're referring to?
basically, let me expand on this. They are accelerators, electron accelerators. Basically, machines working with it, as I say, with electricity, but producing the same effect as the radioactive sources, meaning accelerating the electrons to produce energy. And this energy is what helps to change, let's say, the materials of any product. Let's say you're dealing with plastics, as I said, or you're dealing with food, agriculture, fruits and vegetables. You can change the let's say the properties and in the let's say the DNA basically of the products to become either more resistance to pests, or to deal with the climate change problems, to issues like drought or flood situations. So the radioactivity basically changes that the products and produce a better, let's say, version of a product that is more not only let's say productive, but also more, safer, much safer for the people to consume them. So this is very important for food safety.
Yes.
And also to produce devices like in the medical sector,
for sterilization.
Sterilization, correct,
Yes,
correct.
wonderful.
You can sterilize gloves, for instance, surgical equipment like all these equipment used by surgeons in operations. And so there is no other. I'm sorry not to be so modest on this, but no other technology is so effective as electrons, as linear accelerators, because they really have the capacity, the energy, the power to kill all type of pathogens.
I love that, and thank you for going there with me. And I'm thinking about our audiences that don't have the background that you do or that your center has. I always like to remind maybe some of our younger students that also, if it's cosmetics, if it's makeup or even eye drops, all of that requires that type of sterilization as well. Right. But you mentioned already the word radiation several times, and many of our listeners might have a negative connotation when it comes to the word radiation. Can you talk about radiation as it applies to your center a little bit more? And I know you briefly touched on the purpose of using it in food and other applications for medical supplies and things, and even makeup. But how could radiation possibly be good? Can you expand a little bit more on that?
Sure. And this is very important, Valerie, because as you said, unfortunately there is a misunderstanding about the word nuclear is perceived negatively. And this is because we know that the accidents in the past, particularly in the nuclear power sector, may not really in the applications, in peaceful uses applications, there is not this type of problem, but since everything is under the same umbrella, which is nuclear, people have that in mind that that nuclear is dangerous, is risky, and this is something that represents a big challenge for people working in the nuclear sector. You probably remember, and the media play a big role here, disseminating the information of those. There has been only 3 major, thanks God, major nuclear accidents in the world, but they had a tremendous negative impact in people's perception of nuclear. Yes. And they associated, those accidents and the problem. The latest was Fukushima in Japan. Mm-hmm. And with everything related to radiation, as you mentioned. But radiation, as you know, as I always mention, how it started many, many years ago when President Eisenhower delivered that famous Atoms for Peace speech at the United Nations in 1953. And he said, there is a tremendous opportunity here for the humanity to benefit from the atom. The atom is the source of radiation or radioactivity. So, and that that was the origin of the International Atomic Energy Agency, because of that proposal by President Eisenhower. The international community decided to create the International Atomic Energy Agency within the UN system to provide assistance to all member states around the world to benefit from the atom, as they call it, atoms for peace. Yeah. Later on, late Director General Amano added the word development. So he called it atoms for peace and development. Because those programs involving radioactivity help development. As you mentioned, a couple of applications in health. One probably the most well-known application is treatment of cancer. And diagnostic of cancer, because it has been possible to create technologies, like the nuclear medicine and radiotherapy machines to treat cancer, and that has helped save a lot of lives in the world. On the other side, you have which is maybe I would say the one area where people always think of their own safe is food irradiation. And when they hear food irradiation, they say, how come food is irradiated? So am I eating this food that will harm me, will have problems in my health? No, of course not. Because radiation is, of course, it doesn't have a smell, no color, but it's totally harmless. It's like when I always mention to people, when you have an X-ray, you go to to your doctor. If you have a fracture, you break a bone, and you go to the doctor. He recommends you an X-ray because he wants to see what is happening with your bones, where exactly the fracture is, and how to solve the problem. So you go to have an X-ray, and basically the machine projects those beams, which are totally harmless to your body, and you leave the hospital with no problem at all, and you have an excellent tool to assess the problem you have your breaking bones or whatever, and the doctor is able to fix it based on the tool that the X-ray. The same happened with the food irradiation. If you take food and you irradiate them to kill bacteria, pathogens, all these type of insect problems like the fruit flies, which are in many countries, are totally killed and cleaned by this technology.
So it not only makes food safer, but doesn't it also extend the life or the shelf life of food?
Correct.
Am I mistaken? Okay,
No,
good.
you're totally correct. Good. This is another important, let's say, benefit from food through applying this radiation processing. You can extend the life of food. In some cases, for instance, spices. Yes. Spices can be kept in the shelf for years, 5-7 years. Some other products like fruits, let's say mangoes or papayas or guavas, you can extend the life for months, 3 months. And there are so many retailers now, like here in Texas, the famous H-E-B.
Yes.
If you go to H-E-B, you will see many of their products, fresh products like mangoes, guavas, they are irradiated. Sometimes people are not aware of this. However, because of the regulations, every irradiated product has to have a seal, and that is the emblem of the radiation. It's kind of, they call it the radura. So people knows that the food has been irradiated and is totally safe. They're not exposed to any type of bacteria or of pathogens, like problems like salmonella or E. coli is not present anymore in this type of product. The products have been irradiated.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you sharing that bit of information, because those are everyday applications that maybe perhaps the general audience may not be so much aware, but it can be used in very useful, peaceful ways. And especially with food, because we all eat, we all need food, and especially knowing that it is maintaining food safety and extending the life is so important to all of us, especially as the cost of food seems to be going up quite a bit these days, and to know that our food can last longer because of this type of technology is very reassuring. But what I want to do is start to pivot a little bit more. You mentioned briefly at the beginning that your center, the E-beam Center, has cooperations agreements with, I think it's 6 Latin American countries and 2 Asian countries.
Correct.
And I'm wondering if you can expand upon some of those agreements, those cooperations. But also, I would love for you to spend a little bit of time, Oscar, talking about the importance. Why should we be working with other countries? Should we? Is it important? And not only with these particular countries that these agreements are, these 8, but I want you to somehow let's start also moving to your work at the IAEA and those important programs, those important initiatives, and how it all fits in together, and how not only does it affect us globally, but personally as well.
Yes, very important question, because this is the reason of everything, the purpose. Yes, those agreements that we managed, to have at our E-beam Center with the U.S. government are very, very important to be able to expand our work, to the world. And you ask why this is an important goal to work with the many countries. Well, you're not only helping these countries to improve their safe, let's say, the food safety, which is very important. I was working recently with one country in Latin America, and one of the authorities told me, with this new technology, we will be saving not only people's lives, but also a lot of money in preventive public health, because those problems they have with diarrhea, they generated from the food contamination, it will be stopped, so we will not have that problems anymore. But for countries like the U.S., which the U.S. is importing products from all over the world, and particularly from Latin America, because of the geographical proximity. So many of the fresh produce is coming from these countries in Latin America, and it is important for the U.S. to make sure those food are safe.
Yes.
By promoting the use of these technologies in these countries and providing them with the capabilities to build these facilities, they are ensuring that the imported food is safe, and the consumers in the U.S. are safe. They're consuming clean, safe products, especially fruits and vegetables, those fresh produce. So that's one of the reasons. And the other reason I mentioned before is by promoting this technology in many of these countries, they are reducing the risk for continue using those radioactive sources. Many of these countries in Latin America and other parts of the world had been using cobalt-60 for irradiation, for food irradiation, and many other applications for many, many years, more than 50 years. Yes. So they are trying, the U.S. government in cooperation with us, we're trying to facilitate, let's say, the adoption of these new technologies in these countries. And by doing that, as I said, reducing this risk of radiological risk and also physical security risk. So those, I would say, are the main reasons. And then you mentioned the IAEA, which is exactly in line with these, I would say, objectives. The IAEA, of course, works as an international and intergovernmental organization, work with many, many governments and many countries around the world. I think nowadays they have 173 member states who participate in their activities. And the majority of those member states are developing countries. So those countries benefit enormously from the technical cooperation program, by getting the technical advice and the support to train people, to form skilled people to use those technologies safely, and also to build, I would say, this type of technology that will totally change their situation, and supporting totally and completely their development programs. So you probably, I know you're familiar, Valerie, with many of the projects, technical cooperation projects of the IAEA. If you see their work plans, you see that there is a connection, direct connection from the technical assistance to the development program of the specific country. Like, in a human health project, yes, there is a connection of this technology to cancer treatment or cancer diagnostic. In the food and agriculture sector, you see a connection directly to the consumers of food, of fresh fruits and vegetables. So there is always this impact to the human life, to the yes, humanity. They benefit enormously. Unfortunately, these peaceful applications and the benefits are not so well known. It's something that we need to continue disseminating this information around the world, mm-hmm, of the benefits, yes, of the peaceful uses of nuclear technologies, because the normal people, they are not aware of this. They hear about food irradiation, but yes, they don't even associate it with the atom, with the nuclear. Right. Some people have told me when I mentioned X-rays, I mentioned before, they said, yes, but what has to do with nuclear?
Yes, yes.
Because of course this is not. They are not a specialist.
That's right.
On nuclear. So this is another responsibility we need. We have to really ensure that we disseminate the right information to not only the decision makers in member states or authorities, yes, but also the people.
Yes.
And the media, because the media plays a key role, absolutely, in disseminating information for the public. So that's another big challenge. And in the IAEA, as you mentioned, Valerie, for almost 20 years, I worked with, I would say, more than 100 countries around the world who were introducing nuclear techniques, peaceful uses of nuclear techniques in all the sectors I mentioned. Yes. And I felt, really good when I used to go to a country and see a problem, like in the environmental sector, that they have contaminated rivers, contaminated lakes, and not doing anything about that. So I immediately discussed with the authorities how nuclear techniques can help them, yes, in dealing with the problem, and help them to formulate a technical cooperation project, to deliver that assistance they needed. Then, over the years, I was able to go to the same country and see the benefits, the impact of the project. The people working with nuclear techniques, there were laboratories in place, people taking samples from the environment, testing the samples in the labs using nuclear equipment, to really see what was the source of contamination, yes, and in order to stop that from the origin of the problem. So there are so many benefits and applications around the world that we need to really continue expanding. And here in Texas A&M, I was so happy to join Texas A&M because I have the possibility to continue doing similar work through the Electron Beam Center and working with all these developing countries in acquiring those technologies.
Mm-hmm. So important. As you speak and you mentioned the importance of sharing this information, it is so true, and that's what one of the reasons I enjoy having our podcast so much. First of all, because every guest that comes on, I am just always struck by awe and wonder. I am so impressed, and I'm always intrigued and inspired by our guests, and you are no different. You are already one that I know is going to be one of my outstanding favorite conversations, but it is because of conversations like this. I think that it is important, and it's incumbent on us, us that are in those sectors, to take the time. I think so much of the time we're so involved and what we do as far as the day-to-day of getting our mission and our objectives met and covered, that we sometimes forget the water in which we swim, so to speak, that maybe others aren't that aware. So you, again, taking the time to explain things to me and to the audience is valuable. Thank you. But as you were talking about the IAEA, you mentioned member states. Now, again, that's a phrase that you and I feel very comfortable using. But again, for the audience that may not understand what a member state is, what is a member state?
Sure. As I said, this is an intergovernmental organization. What does it mean? It means that this organization belongs to the countries around the world who join the organization, not as you know, probably the United Nations whole community, international community, is more than 200 countries nowadays. But for the IAEA, because it's a very specialized organization working in the nuclear sector, not all countries around the world are, first of all, familiarized with this field of activity, and second, they're not, they don't have the capabilities yet to work with those technologies. So they need to build those capabilities. So it's a paradox. They do not belong to the IAEA because they don't have the capabilities, and if they join the IAEA, they could have the capabilities to benefit. So those countries, when they decide to join the IAEA, they become immediately a member state. This is the word member state, they are part of the membership of the organization. They have, as in any other organization, there are rights, and obligations, and they have to contribute financially to the organization, let's say, budget, because it's the way for the organization to really be able to work. But I have to say, the developing countries, who are the majority of the membership, I would say.
And you said there were how many?
173
member states.
And out of those 173, 145 are developing countries receiving technical cooperation. The other member states are, the IAEA called them resource countries. Why resource? Because they don't obtain technical cooperation because they are developed countries, they're industrialized countries, they already have those technologies in place, but they provide their expertise to the developing countries who are building those capacities to be able to use nuclear techniques. So in terms of budget, how it works is the United Nations headquarters in New York establish what they call a scale of quotas. Meaning, based on the GDP, on the gross domestic product of each country, the United Nations decided that this country should pay a certain amount of the budget of the organization. So of course, developed countries, industrialized countries paid more, and developing countries pay less because of the situation of the GDP and the development levels. So developing countries really benefit, I have to say, because they pay a small quota to the organization, but they get more from the organization. So, and developed countries also, I would say, benefits. Why? Because they, in the technical cooperation program, that consists of providing training, providing equipment, providing expertise for a country to be able to use a nuclear technique. Those developed countries are the ones who provide the experts, the equipment, and also the know-how. And the organization pays for that. So IAEA pays all those experts going to different countries around the world to provide their knowledge. And so they receive also, let's say, a contribution from the IAEA for sharing the expertise. So this is the way it works. And I think it's a very good arrangement, I would say, and it's balanced. Because in the organization, everybody has to benefit, and contribute also. So during my years in the IAEA, I always was really impressed seeing this, looking at those discussions among member states, making decisions what to do when a certain problem came up For instance, when the Fukushima accident happened, all member states came together. There was an emergency meeting convened by the Director General to see what to do, to help Japan.
Yes.
And not only Japan, because the effects of the radiation, goes everywhere.
Yes.
So everybody was afraid of this problem. So immediately a plan of action was put in place, coordinated, facilitated by the IAEA, but there was a possibility to act immediately. Yes. Send experts to the region, to Japan and to Asia, to monitor the radioactivity, to see to what extent the radioactivity has reached certain areas, the sea, the environment, the air, earth. So, and immediately provide solutions to that problem. So this is I would say the beauty of a program, of an international program like the IAEA, who is able to convene everybody around the world, developed and developing countries, put them to work together, and provide solutions to everybody. So,
thank you for that explanation. And from my perspective too, Oscar, as you know, I've participated, and for me, it was so beneficial. Although I was asked to participate as an expert from a developed country, it was a very humbling experience because, first of all, you're removed from your country and you're visiting a member state's country possibly, or they're in Vienna at the IAEA home base. But it was an opportunity, although I was asked to be there as an expert, to provide instruction, to provide information, to provide some type of expertise. But it was humbling because I learned so much. I always felt as though I walked away learning as much, if not more, from my colleagues that participated, from the member states and those from the IAEA as well. The perspective was so important, and just realizing that you can learn from anyone. Everybody has a best practice to share, and although it may not fit perfectly in line with your programming or your system, a good idea is a good idea. And if it's a really good idea, it can be tweaked and adapted to your need. But I would also say, whenever I had participated in an event, or even in casual conversations, or even perhaps you might hear something through media that, people will question, why are we doing this? Why are you doing this? It's not just so altruistic. I mean, there's a benefit to sharing your information and your technologies, and also maybe your products, as far as different experts going, because they're able to highlight to different countries, possibly new customers, new corporations. So as you mentioned, it is a win for everyone, at least from my perspective and many others. And I will always be so grateful to the years, the opportunities that I've had in every relationship and every program, cooperation that I've ever participated in. So for the times that you made that possible, thank you so much for including me and thinking of me, because I always knew that I walked away a better person, a better professional from having participated.
I like that, Valerie, because I remember the time when I was in the IAEA and you were one of our experts, particularly in a very important area, which was education. Because, as you know, education is, I would say, the driving force for everything. You cannot change the situation in any country. If you don't have good education and successful education programs, and particularly in this field, in nuclear science and technology, which is a very specialized area, and with all the issues we already mentioned, you need to educate people. And you have to start from the very, very young ages, from schools. And you have I know you have a vast experience in this area. So you contributed, I remember, quite substantially, a lot to the IAEA program by going around the world and telling your story, telling how U.S. and particularly your work in Texas was a success, and how schools in Texas benefit from this interaction and cooperation with you in basically having the tools, the right tools to teach STEM, as we call it, the STEM education, which is sciences, technology, engineering, and mathematics, so that the students can really see the benefit and can be attracted to those fields, because it could be quite, I call it a very dry-ish, subject. I mean, when people hear about mathematics, chemistry, physics, they say, well, what, I don't need to go into those such a lot of work. And if I want to be, I don't know, if I want to be a biologist or a microbiologist, well, that is not the case. For a biologist or microbiologist, they need to know a lot of physics, chemistry, in order to do their work. But it's not seen that way. So when you go to a school, and I know you were to many countries as an IAE expert, and explain this to the right audience, to the teachers of the schools, to the authorities of the education, institutions, they understood the value. And I know, Valerie, and I have to say, you made a big contribution, because nowadays, after your participation in those missions, expert missions, many of these countries, particularly in Asia and the Pacific, are applying your model. And the model you created in Texas, and now it was exported to those countries, and now are using it as a very successfully. And it is expanding. I understand there are more than 10,000 schools now using this model in Asia, in different countries, and teachers are now using your methods. So that's the great contribution that you do as an expert, and you contribute to the IAEA mission by participating as an expert. So I have to say I am grateful with you for this contribution.
You touch my heart. I'm humbled by your comments, and as you speak, it goes directly to my educator's heart, and also just as a mother when I think of young children. Thank you for bringing up education, because I'm a bit biased when it comes to education, as you know, some of my work. But personally, to me, education is the foundation for everything beyond the personal aspects of other parts of your life. I think when we talk about these types of efforts, when we think about these international corporations, sometimes we think about these very big projects and agreements between countries, but it is so important, Oscar. And again, you've led in so many ways, of course, at the global level, but no matter your position, your background, you've always made time to participate in these grassroots, so to speak, activities. You've always supported them. You've always recognized the importance. But what I want to say from those experiences and my own professional experiences is that when we work, it doesn't matter if it's locally within, for us, Texas, or throughout the U.S., and even globally, so many of these initiatives, when we think about these big technological shifts or desires to make these improvements or investments, it takes years to stand up. Not only if you think about the physicality of developing just the area, the location of building something up, you need a workforce behind it. You need systems in place. You need educational systems. You need workforce systems. Yeah. And to me, the work that you've always done and the work that we do here locally in Texas, it meshes well. Again, the targets may be much more narrow or broad depending on the project, but it's in alignment, because for education and workforce, we have to start very young. As I mentioned, a lot of those projects take many, many years. Yeah. And if we invest in young children, not just secondary, but as you mentioned, primary, if we start now having those conversations about STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, nuclear applications, just even beginning to have those early, appropriate conversations with even those primary students about workforce, giving them that vocabulary, they'll be ready by the time they're ready, off set for university, college, technical schools here in the U.S.
Yeah.
I think that's so important because if we wait until they're in secondary school, or even worse, if we wait until they're in or headed toward university, we've missed such a rich opportunity to bring about the awareness, how it applies, as we talked about food and medicine, those applicable relationships to how it affects him every day, not only as a future employee, but as a current student, but just as an individual. So everything you speak of has a place for everyone involved within a community. And it's just about having these conversations, that realizing how we're all affected by it. So why not just become more aware? You can make your decisions. We try to always be transparent, as I know you are. Every agency, be it the IAEA or even at the E-Beam Center, always so ready to give information, but being transparent in doing that.
Right. And I think you touched upon very important aspects of education being the vehicle, let's say, for making people, let's say, able. It's an enabler, to really, as I call it, even a social mobilizer.
Yes.
Because if you give the right education to people, they're able to really ripe those opportunities in a better way. When you mentioned we start with the primary schools, those children, some of them, are already thinking what to do in the future, and many of them, they want to be fire brigade staff, they want to be nurses, some want to do medicine, becoming a doctor. So you need to really encourage that and facilitate that decision in the future, because they, as you said, they become high schoolers and they're right about to join the colleges, and they're still not sure. They know their passion, but they are not sure how those programs out there offering by the many universities will help them to achieve their goals. So this type of, I would say, guidance is very important. And this is what I remember you did with many teachers internationally, explaining to them how to present them, how to provide the message to the students in a way that they are not only learning the subject, whatever physics or chemistry, but they also getting the information that how this can be applied in their lives, in their careers. And that's not easy, people might think, it's an easy task. No, it's not. And it requires, as you said, methodology. It requires tools. It requires a lot of, skills that you have done it for many years. And this is what you shared with many teachers and as I said, they are doing it now. But they are also producing, I would say, generation of students and future managers in their countries that will be able to contribute to society. Those countries, Valerie, an important, I always see this a key, the level of education in a country is a criteria. The major organizations internationally, like the private industries, for instance, in the high-tech industry, this is what they assess.
Yes.
When they want to invest in a specific country, they go first. They look at the education system. Why? Because it will require a lot of investment and time if the people are not prepared to absorb this technology. The workers, companies like Microsoft or Intel, for them, knowledge is key. And of course, when they hire employees, they don't need to know everything, but they have to have the basis to learn, and the eagerness to learn. So when they found this type of people in a country, they said this is the place to invest because the learning curve is short, will be short, and we don't need to require so many resources to educate these people. It will be very quickly when they can really catch up and really be able to work on these technologies. So again, it's because of education. Right.
Foundation.
Yes.
As we begin an attempt to close out this conversation, which is going to be so difficult, I want to pivot a little bit more to your background beyond the IAEA. You had such a rich career before you even started with the IAEA, which was 20 years of your career, but you spent a lot of time in diplomatic situations, working with governments. I want to know, especially now, sometimes you hear so much about individuals, us losing our capacity to be diplomatic in situations.
Yeah.
Why is diplomacy so important, not only at a national level, but on the day-to-day personally? Because I will tell you, Oscar, I think anyone that has ever met you, most definitely I will attest, there's never been a day that I've had a conversation, a communication with you, that you have not been the utmost diplomat. You are always professional, diplomatic, always choosing to find a positive path forward. And I wonder if you are intentional about that, if that comes to you naturally, and either way, why is it important?
Yes. I also wonder about that sometimes because I have to say, I think it becomes very naturally for me, because what my principles are that you need to respect people and you need to recognize not only their knowledge, but the right to think the way they're thinking. And this is the key for, a successful diplomatic relationship. As you said, nowadays, the world is in a very complex situation at the moment. And we are needing urgently, very urgent, good negotiators, diplomatic negotiators for looking for diplomatic solutions to this big problem that we have around the world. And someone was telling me recently, working in this in the diplomatic area, and he told me, Oscar, we need more, being more innovative and creative in peace solutions. There are many people, unfortunately, working in war issues and creating war problems around the world. But in the peace side, not many of us are thinking of innovative solutions. And this is needed urgently, mechanisms for peace. Because, as you know, it's really complex. I mean, particularly what is happening now in Europe with Ukraine, is really sad to see that we're really not being able to reach any agreement. I mean, all possibilities are always hitting, blocks.
Yes.
And generate other problems. Whatever initiative is taken, immediately there is someone saying, well, no, because that will create another problem. So it has to be, and for that we need to really work together, cooperate, understanding the situation of the different parties in the problem, and try to be, as I said, creative and innovative in building peace. So my approach in life was always, since I started working at the international level, and even in my country, because always you have, of course, which is naturally, people thinking differently to your thinking. And you need to know how to manage that productively, and not, confronting the person, but being rational and reasoning, about the way they're thinking and the way you think things should be. So I think this is for me is the basis for everything. As I said, respect. You have to respect other people, and you have to acknowledge, recognize their needs and their problems, and see to how you accommodate this in the formula that you need to put together to move things forward in any situation. If you're talking about a project, that you want to, move forward with a project really dealing with waste. Mm-hmm. It's a typical problem in nuclear. Yes. No community wants to be hosting a nuclear waste facility because they're afraid what will happen to their people, to their health and their lives. So, and how to really, convince these people that this is a solution for everybody. And it will be taking the necessary measures to ensure that it will be no problem for the health or the lives of these people. But if you're not able to communicate that properly, and that's a key issue, communication, how to communicate your ideas, your beliefs, your vision to others in a way they will not feel threatened by your position or not be offended by your position, that they will open up to your solution. So this is key, and I think this is I will say diplomacy is the art to make the other person think that your ideas are theirs, and they immediately embrace them, because they feel part of it. They feel part of the solution. As you said, it has to be a win-win solution. Cannot be winners and losers, because that never works.
No, because we all want to be seen and we all want to be heard. And even though we may be on the receiving end of learning and taking direction, it's just a human need to know that we've been heard in our concerns and our thoughts and even our ideas. So that's perfectly in alignment with all of that.
Yeah.
As we begin to close, I want to know if there's anything that you'd like to share, anything that you really want to cover before we end our conversation this morning.
Thank you. Well, first of all, I would like to thank you for this opportunity. As I said, I think it's a wonderful initiative that you put together, and I'm glad to be part of it, at least in a small portion of it. But I would say that, again, this is part of the communication of efforts. And I'm really glad you allow me to explain our work, because this, I know, will be shared with many, many people, or is being shared with many, many people. So hopefully they will be more aware or more informed of the work we're doing, particularly here in Texas A&M in the E-beam Center, and how not only particular institutions, organizations, but in general, the public can benefit from these efforts, from the promoting, let's say, the technologies I already explained on electron beam and X-ray technologies for industrial applications, and how these projects we are conducting benefit them. Because as you said, the people will ask, why you're doing this?
Yes.
And you need to explain that, why this is important for them. And I think it's something that I try to do also every day. As you said, we try to be transparent everywhere, and particularly here at the E-beam Center, we're open to anyone trying to learn about these technologies. We receive them with open arms, said, come and see how these technologies work and how you can really put together a facility like this in your country or in your community, in your state. And this is why the U.S. government has decided to designate this E-beam Center here in Texas A&M as a demonstration center, particularly for the new technologies arising, like low energy electrons accelerators. We are now installing a new equipment with low energy to show the world how these help in providing solutions to many problems in the industry, in health, in food and agriculture, in environment, in other applications. So I think this conversation helped Valerie to really disseminate this message to everybody. Thank you.
Oh, I'm so glad. And you always have an open chair. You're always welcome and invited. I'd love to have a follow-up conversation. And most definitely, if ever there's a project or a program that you want to highlight, or any of your colleagues, please let us know, and we're happy to have those conversations. But before we truly do close out, I have one question, and I just have to ask, Oscar, of all of your accomplishments, all of the programs in your amazing career, is there a standout, one that you feel particularly proud that you participated in or perhaps even led? Is there a standout?
I have to say all my engagements are really, really very interesting and very, I would say, rewarding. Mm-hmm. But I have to say, after this career at the IAEA, we already talked about, coming to Texas A&M was a great decision. I'm very happy and grateful for those who made it possible for me to come here and continue doing what I'm doing. Being here and being part of this so prestigious institution has been, I think, the corollary of my career, my professional career. So I'm very grateful for the IAEA for the opportunity they gave me for many years to serve many member states and facilitating cooperation around the world. But coming now here and using that experience that I accumulated for many years in working at the international level and being able to continue supporting the programs at Texas A&M, particularly in this field that as you can see, I'm very passionate about. It's been a quite remarkable achievement for me. So yes, I would say so.
I think that deserves a whoop.
Yes, definitely.
I know that we only have benefited from your presence here, your partnership here, and everything that you do here. And as we close out, I want to thank our audience for listening in today. I hope you've listened to this entire conversation and all of our other conversations. And I know for me, and I hope for you, we'll be more like Dr. Acuna in moving throughout life with diplomacy, hoping for more communication, all for the purposes of making advancements in a peaceful, useful way. Thank you and have a wonderful day.